The views presented in this program are not meant to express the specific views of the Lafayette Bible Fellowship. You are listening to the Vigilance Radio Network.
Wow, quick intro. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast, Culture Insanity. It's been a while, huh? It's been a while. I think our last episode was the end of last summer or something, and then the end of the summer and the holidays derailed us. But we're back.
I've been going insane without somebody to talk to.
I'm sure you have. I'm sure you have. But yeah, so we're back. We're back for season 3 now. I guess just up front for some sort of housekeeping. The way we're doing the podcasts this year is a little bit different as far as we're viewing things as officially seasons. And so a season for us will run, January through June, and we'll take a break July and August, come back for a couple months in September and October, and then we'll take the holiday break November, December, and the reason being is to avoid sort of what we had going on last year, where we were completely derailed by the busyness and stuff. So just for sustainability purposes, we're doing it like that. So look forward to that. So we'll be on the same sort of schedule every 2 weeks, so twice a month on the second and fourth Saturdays of the month. So 9 a.m. is the same start time. So if you look forward to the podcast, like at least a couple people do and have texted me throughout the last few months, then that's what you can look forward to. Second and fourth Saturday, 9 o'clock, January through June, September and October. Season 3. So here we are. So how you guys been? Peachy. Good. So I had a fun idea for this episode, and it's the first episode of the new season. It's the first episode of the year. It's the first episode of a new decade. Lots of firsts. So what I sort of wanted to do was theme this first episode on pop culture trends. So our little trivia game will be on pop culture trends of the last decade, trends or events, and that's what the contestants can look forward to. But then this episode is going to be sort of speculating pop culture trends and events of this next decade, and with those trends, where we envision the culture taking us, and sort of what will be implied as we go along in this next decade, in this next year. So yeah, that's what I thought today's episode could be about. And I have a few different sort of topics to sort of provide for us a skeleton, but I am not gonna be offended if we sort of just start spitballing and stuff. So if our conversation takes us elsewhere, that's totally fine. This episode is just to sort of forecast where we're heading as a culture and what is going to be said along the way, and what's going to be implied, and where truth will be, and all these different things, and how we're going to respond to it as a society, as a church at large, and these different things. So that's what today's episode is going to be about. So I'm gonna start off guns blazing. We're gonna have a caller call in to help us explain one of these things before we talk about it. But we're gonna start out swinging big. So fashion has sort of become a really big thing. I'm not gonna say for the first time, or again, fashion's always been a big thing depending on the circles you are in. But it seems to be more of a thing today, like with the younger crowd, and how it's being done and how it's being released and all these different things. So we're going to talk a little bit about fashion. I'm going to read a little bit of excerpt here from an article I pulled, and then we'll just ask some questions about it, and we'll speculate on what that means for us. So a big thing right now with fashion is different brands and different companies being gender sensitive or gender fluid as far as how they promote their product, right? So you may or may not have heard about that, but it's a big thing in the fashion industry right now. That gender fluid clothing is a make or break, so they say. So this is what one article says. And we can talk about it. Gender consideration has never been more prevalent. Brands that are not recognizing people who identify as non-binary, meaning male or female, will alienate an important and rapidly growing section of society and will also lose the support of other culturally aware and socially conscious consumers. Brands need to stay ahead of this as we are living in an era of ultra-specialization and personalization that applies to gender identification as much as it applies to product design. Brands can engage through product and message development that speaks directly to the non-binary audience and celebrates their individuality. For brands unsure of how to engage, I suggest considering partnerships with existing cause-based organizations as an initial step. Those ready to make a more meaningful and culture-shaping, quote-unquote, approach could develop limited edition gender-neutral products.
Sure.
Oh, I thought it was going to be a wow. It's a sure. Yeah, so the basic question for all these different topics is, what is this going to mean for us moving forward? As a basic, Kickstarter question, but will businesses fear failure if they are not quote-unquote cause-based? So in this regard, it has to do with being gender fluid and sensitive to people's different identifications that they want to be known by. So what do we think? Is this going to be a continuing trend, or is this a blip? Are we going to start seeing this on a mass scale, or is it going to be like a specialty thing, but not really on a mass level? What do we think about this?
You're asking me?
I'm probably asking the two least fashionable people in the room right now.
Well, I mean...
Wait, what does that mean?
That means you have your gear and you have your gear and you don't stray from it. It just is what it is.
Well, first and foremost, I envision jeans with no more zipper.
Jeans with no more zipper?
Yeah, jeans with no zippers.
Okay.
And instead it will be... I understand what you're saying, but...
I don't know where it goes from there. I mean, jeans with no zippers and shirts with no tucks for upper accoutrements. Just gender neutral.
I'll be honest, I have no idea what you're talking about.
I don't know what the shirt with no tucks thing is.
Yeah.
You know that you guys don't know much about sewing.
Oh, of course, yes.
Okay, so women, when you sew a blouse, you have to take into consideration breasts and the size and what have you.
Oh,
sure.
No more of that.
Oh.
So what will it be?
Just something you can throw on and hang out, like a T-shirt.
So
T-shirts are going to become very popular. Although my wife told me that tank tops are no longer allowed on cruises.
Really?
Yeah.
Probably depends on the cruise line, but some of them are more like strict as far as their formalities.
Why?
go.
Why is that? Do you know?
I don't know.
I'm gonna look that. I'm gonna research that.
Yeah, don't know.
I mean, you already sort of see this kind of thing. It wasn't clothes specific, but I think it was in the last year, maybe in the last 2 years, no more than a couple years old. Like Target, for example, they have done away with. I think it was specific to toys, like the boys and girls toy section, because they didn't want to box people in, quote unquote. Is that going to be a continuing trend in different stores, different clothing stores? Is there not going to... You know how when you walk into a clothing store, there's the obvious boy section and the obvious girl section, and you walk in with your wife or your girlfriend and you guys go like this because you're looking at different things.
It's a flash in the pan as far as I'm concerned.
Is it? Yeah, that's the question. Is it just another example of the loud being loud, but that doesn't represent the majority?
Yeah.
Is that as easy as that?
Yeah.
I don't know.
I
There's
think so.
there's some fashion trends that I've always been a fan of. The robe, for instance.
I sport a robe.
You know, I'm talking about the medieval robe.
Ah.
There's really no reason why a guy
Yeah,
or
why
a
did
girl
we
can't
move away
not
from that?
wear the medieval robe.
Yeah. No, I like it.
So there are some, to cite a more recent example, the Chuck Taylor. You know, Chuck Taylor shoes, they don't have a male or female. They just have sizes depending on if you're male or female.
I like the Nazi leather coats that go all the way to the floor.
The dusters?
Yeah. Not the Western cow that cut off at your calf.
Are they
But
specific to
they
Nazis?
go all the
I
way-
don't know.
They're the only.
I'm trying to
ones-
help you out here.
The SS are the only ones I ever see wear them all the way to the floor.
Really?
What about Catholic priests?
No, they don't wear leather coats.
I don't know about leather, but they wear like the
Really
robe.
long,
Yeah.
yeah.
I saw a guy recently. But so is it just so you think that it is not going to be a trend, or you think that it could be?
I
Because
don't-
you're just citing examples.
Right.
That
I don't necessarily have a problem with that in particular being a trend where there's gender neutral clothing. I can't imagine that there will ever be a time, just because of like the biological needs, right? I can't imagine that there will ever be a time where they won't make cisgendered clothing. That being said, I think that they might like distinction it that way. But I mean, come on, it's a consumer's world, right? So like they're losing money if they don't make it nuanced or niche. And so they want everything to be like they want everything the ominous they that agenda wants everything to be asexual and genderless and so on and so forth. But to make money, you got to have extra tangents, extra places for that money to go to. So, like maybe you'll start out with a base level of a generality where there's no gender, but I can't imagine they'll ever go away from having, things that are more cisgendered in nature. And I shudder to use that term because I don't like it. But I can't imagine they'll ever go away from that simply because, that's money.
Well, and the reality of it is you're looking at something that's only driven by less than 1% of the entire population.
I think it's 3.
Well, I don't think so. I think it's less than that.
Maybe
But
in
the
regard to
point-
fashion.
But the point is that you have a whole swath of individuals across the country who are going to be looking for and depending upon traditional fashioning. And I have to say, have you guys ever watched the fashion industry come out every year with,
They got some
people
weird
walking
stuff.
on the catwalks and some of the weird stuff that comes out? That stuff never gets to market. Come on.
Yeah, I mean, I understand what you're saying. Like it's specific to that world and like being controversial and stuff, but
Yeah.
it's never meant to be like a mass produced style or something. Like it's to them it's art, right?
Yeah, it's a
like,
flash in the pan. That's what I said earlier.
one of the questions I asked initially was, will businesses fear failure if they are not cause-based? Do you think that people will start shopping brands based on, I don't know, some sort of mission statement that the brand may or may not need to make in order to stay, stay okay by the people's...
Stay relevant, yeah.
relevant, yeah. Like, do you think that people will start to look for that in their preferences? Like, oh, they support this. I
Yeah.
like this. Oh,
Well,
they
absolutely.
don't support this. I'm not going to touch them.
That's what happened with was it deodorant commercials or
Not
what was
only
it?
deodorant, but I mean Nike and I
But
believe that companies are going to try to be sensitive to that to a degree.
But more than sensitive, do you think that the culture will force them into having an outright like stance on like the latest issues and topics?
Well, the beauty of capitalism is that
Yes, I do.
the beauty of capitalism is that the market will drive what will work and what will not work.
It's like how you can go to church. Sorry to interrupt. It's like how you can go to churches and you click the tab that says beliefs or whatever. You know,
Yeah.
like on Nike's website, is there going to be a beliefs section, so to speak?
Probably is. And it's probably woke too.
So I just
woke
looked. I just looked it up. In 2017, there was a Gallup poll that concluded that 4.5% of adult Americans identified as LGBT, with a 5.1% of women identifying as LGBT, compared to 3.9% of men. But a different survey in 2016 from the Williams Institute, so not Gallup, estimated that 0.6% of U.S. adults identify as transgender. The interesting thing to note about that is that is a wide range of counterculture sexuality within that. So like not all lesbians want to be gender neutral, for instance, and that's a really interesting. And not all homosexuals, like males, want to be gender neutral either in their clothing. Mm-hmm. So it is a very, very low percent that would want it to be gender neutral. But that's a really interesting question too, because like the identification with a specific type of clothing in order to identify yourself with a different gender is also interesting. Mm. Like what happens to those lesbians, for instance, like Ellen, who for the longest time have dressed in a way that has been more associated with male dressing.
Yeah.
That's interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Yeah. And
robes,
then there's also
robes.
like
I'm telling you, robes. That's the answer.
The percentage is low for people that identify that way and that, like what you just said. But there's also a percentage of other people, right, that want people to be able to do what they want to do. So what's that percentage? And is that still a vast minority? Probably, but
as I get older,
but a lot of people don't want to ruffle feathers, and so they say give them what they want, and they're not.
As I get older, I self-identify as a woman when I got to take a leak, and there's only a woman's bathroom available.
Okay.
And I carry a man purse with me just so that
You do? I didn't think so. At most, you carry something on your belt with nail clippers.
Well, let's be honest. You wear a man purse all the time, right? You have like a utility belt or something.
That's what I mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's covered up, but yeah.
Toga. See, John Parker agrees with me. He says toga. I'm telling you, there's something to this like ancient Greco-Roman, these or medieval like robes and togas and things like that.
Hashtag bring back the
That's because
the robe.
John Parker's a party animal, so he identifies
And John Parker in particular is in touch with his fashionable side.
Toga party. Remember toga parties, John?
Toga party.
Remember toga parties.
Yeah, Animal House.
I like it. Hashtag bring back the toga.
Bring back the toga. Okay. We're gonna put a pin in the fashion thing as I try to get a hold of our call-in for talking about it and giving his on the street take on it. But another thing that we have on the board for discussion today is more on the trend of what would you call it, with like dead celebrities and artists and such. How would you categorize that, Josh? More on the trend of
dead celebrities.
Yes.
Okay, I'll just jump into it.
Image something.
Yeah, so a big thing in the last couple years was like holograms and such, right?
Digital casting.
Digital casting.
Oh, you mean like Natalie Cole singing with her father?
I mean that's interesting. That would be a really old version of that. Sure.
There's a newer.
I'm gonna bring the younger audience along since you got the older audience covered.
If you don't know who Nat Cole is, that is so sad.
So yes to what you said, but there's also things like Michael Jackson in hologram form and Carrie Fisher being in movies via CGI and so on and so forth, right?
Okay,
Princess Leia.
Sure.
But so that's been a thing, and Paul Walker even was in I think he was one of the first, right? In Fast and the Furious at the end there. I don't know if you guys watch those movies, but.
I mean, no, but yes.
It was like whoa, Paul Walker is in the movie.
He's still in the movie, yeah.
It was like a jarring thing for us to see. That was a few years ago. But so more on that trend. Here's the excerpt from the article. While dead actors like Paul Walker and Carrie Fisher have been resurrected for franchise roles, some creators are already exploring the possibility of casting long-gone stars in new original features. Finding Jack, a Vietnam War film currently in pre-production, has reportedly cast James Dean, who died in 1955 in a car crash at the age of 24, as its lead role. So that's crazy.
As its
lead role, yeah. So it's taking like a huge leap forward in that regard. It's not just
how do they do that? Like CGI? Is that what?
Yeah, I mean, have you heard of the deep fakes? It was a thing in the last year.
Yeah.
Deep fakes. So basically, through technology, anybody can be you, which is terrifying.
I'm all about truth. I don't have anything to do with fakes.
You should look it up. It's frightening, actually. Yeah. Deep fakes. Basically, your face can be can be worn by someone else, and your voice can be. There was the Jordan Peterson thing, right, Josh? Where someone took. I don't know how they do it, but took. Maybe it's like it's some sort of algorithm or whatever, where it takes everything the man has ever publicly said, and now you can speak as him.
Wow.
Right, you just type it in, and then it uses his voice.
Sounds completely it sounds 100% organic.
Had you seen the Obama deepfake that Jordan Peele did?
Yeah, that's another one. But so deepfakes was a big thing in the last year, and now we have this thing where, as the lead role, James Dean, who died 60 years ago, that's what's being put on the table. So, what is the implication of that? One of the questions I have is, what will it mean if you no longer have a say whatsoever in your legacy, because you've been dead for 60 years and now you don't have a choice of whether or not you're being represented in a certain way with the deep fakes thing? Like, what does that mean for us moving forward?
I agree. I think that the legal ramifications have yet to be identified and explored. I mean, like you said, Adam, just the idea that, somebody could dredge up whatever they want to and create out of that fake identity that they've established a whole new legacy.
Mm-hmm. And now the next generation, these kids now, they'll know James Dean from that new movie that's out.
Yeah,
you know, which is crazy. Like, and he has no say in it. Like, it's an interesting time.
He has no say in it. And what about
his estate?
His estate will have a say.
Well, what about the ramifications from the monies and the estate and all that? I mean, I can just think of a myriad of legal issues that could come up.
Sorry, go ahead, Josh.
Well, I was just gonna show a clip from this so that Pastor Monty has a context for just how crazy it is.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I'll get it on the camera here.
This PSA. This is a clear example of technology that could become more widely used. And ABC's David Wright is here with more. David, this video is proof that we can't believe everything that we see online.
That is right, Paula. Good morning. They say that the camera
hold on.
lies, but technology is advancing so fast.
Let's get it.
Can lie with harmless fun.
Okay, here we go.
The message here that it's getting harder and harder
of course.
to our eyes and ears.
Sure, it's hard.
Classic case of YouTube works fine until you want to show someone.
That's right.
And
I'll
then
find it.
Well, no, that's
buffers.
Okay. What I would say is, when my oldest son and I would talk about Star Trek, for example, he would always tell me that the technology that we saw in Star Trek being developed would guide us into the future.
Can you see this on the camera, Jasmine? Yeah. Okay.
And
all right, check this out. It's not long. Okay, you're gonna have to stress yourself there because I need it on camera.
Which our enemies can make it look like anyone is saying anything at any point in time, even if they would never say those things. So, for instance, they could have me say things like, Killmonger was right. Or Ben Carson is in the sunken place. Or, how about this? Simply, President Trump is a total and complete dipshit.
Oh.
Now, you see, I would never say these things. At least not in a public address. But someone else would. Someone like Jordan Peele. This is a dangerous time.
Yeah, I wouldn't sign off on that because the voice isn't right.
I don't know. It's
Yeah,
pretty
it's
stinking
totally
close.
spot on. Yes, it
Close,
is.
but it's not exactly.
I mean, come on.
If you've studied Obama and listened to the way he talks, this is not exactly right on. But of course,
You're right.
I have a well-defined ear.
You're right. Of course, you wouldn't be taken in, but the rest of
That
society
is passable by 99% of people's standards.
Would. Yes.
But okay, back to what I was saying earlier. So Star Trek, Mission Impossible.
Oh, sure.
You know, some of those types of things where you see this technology and you see people doing these types of things, it's coming into fruition.
Yeah, definitely.
And you're right, Adam. It is scary.
William Shatner, in particular. William Shatner he's like partnered with some sort of company. I mean, the man's like almost 90, but he's partnered with some sort of company to preserve his digital image. And
Interesting.
And basically,
Oh, yeah, I remember reading about that.
yeah, and basically to make it so that his estate can cast him and continue to make like future things off of him.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would say, like, I would ask the question, what can we, like, as believers be doing to guard ourselves against that? And the short answer is, you know, living a life above reproach type thing. But
Right.
when you have things like what you just showed, the Jordan Peterson thing, like, that's beyond being, like, that's taking technology and then completely making a voice for you. And it's, like, what can you do about that? What can you do about that?
I think it's you know, living publicly. I know that sounds kind of weird, but
So that there's no question of
That's right.
who you were and what you're about and what.
that's right. You got to start making official statements, you know, and living publicly and being honest with who you are instead of having everything be behind closed doors and subjective and interpretive.
Yeah, and I don't think from a legal standpoint, this type of issue will take years to work its way through the courts in regard to the protection of public.
Well, they've already been working on that. I mean, they've already been working on that with various estates. So I think that I was reading about this. There's a contract for it specifically where they're having like agents build it into the contract of their clients, or their like clients are starting to have that put into the contract that their image.
Well, for
is
people
preserved.
in the industry, sure, for people in the industry, but for common people like us, that will bring up a civil liberties issue, which will need to be addressed by the courts.
I mean, look, this sort of thing has been happening, right? It's just we have like a visual reality now that was unachievable in the past. But come on, like as Bible scholars, theologians, right? There's that term pseudepigrapha, right? And it means basically people writing under your name, right? The only way that you were able to preserve that is to preserve who you are, as opposed to say the Gospel of Thomas or whatever that came. So for those of you guys who don't know, you guys will hear about other gospels, right? And you'll hear about like other books that were supposedly lost, right? No scholar believes those books were actually written by those people. That being said, there were people who would constantly throw if you were like a famous apostle or something, they would throw your name onto their book to make it seem like you wrote it, so their book would become more famous. And that's happened
That's
forever.
still popular in Eastern culture.
Right, and that's happened forever. So the way that we can tell, the reason why no scholars believe that is because we have the actual established writings of those authors, and when we compare the two, we can see what's real. And there has to be some critical scholarship that takes place. And I think the same thing's going to happen here, is where people need to be more choosy and discerning about their image, and not just relying on, you know, not relying on anything to preserve that, you know? So if you have a huge digital footprint, like I do, for instance, then when somebody tries to make you into something that you're not, then they're going to have a hard time. It also means you got to be really careful about your digital footprint. It means you got to, like, say, for instance, you got to make statements of belief and things like that. And I wonder if there's going to be like a new market for that.
Well, there is that commercial that they show on TV occasionally about if your reputation has been ruined online, this company will go in and work with you to clean up the damage.
I've never seen that.
Yeah, it's
like a firm, some sort of group of lawyers or something.
Yeah. They advertise where if your reputation, I think it's called Reputation Defender or something like that. But
what
yes,
a crazy time! What a crazy time! You can specialize in this sort of thing and defend people in that regard.
Reputation Defender ranked number 1.
Reputation Defender. Michael Jackson probably has
He's got a few reputation
defenders, but it's more. I was going to say it's more in that line. It's more on that same line, which we covered extensively last season with the whole Michael Jackson thing. But dead, but his legacy is still being slandered or whatever.
Well,
despite
what these people are after is money.
Yeah, and I don't want to. We don't have to get into that again. Like I said, we covered it last year, but it's just more along that same line as far as
we did cover it last year. But recently in the news,
they were able to take it to civil court.
Yeah, the courts gave them permission to proceed.
Yeah, right. I just saw that.
So that's all about money.
John Parker says it goes to the debate of is your image and voice really yours if it's being videotaped, recorded wherever we go now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Yeah. People don't realize the extent of that, but it's true. Everything's listening all the time.
I mean, what do you think about that? Like Josh is saying, and I know you have specific views about, public living and stuff, but with where we're at today, like, is that hard for you to fathom that you have to live publicly in order that you're not being slandered how do you say that
posthumously?
Word? Posthumously, yeah.
Well,
because I know you have a mind your own business shtick. So how do you feel? No offense.
No.
But how do you reconcile that, and what do you think?
So if
how do you navigate that?
If somebody's out there and you think that you're going to duplicate me. Good luck with that.
I mean, you have a pretty good footprint as far as the podcast goes, so I don't necessarily fear for you. But
for the record, I feel like it would be very easy to duplicate you.
And posthumously, you know what? I could. Okay, it doesn't matter because I'll be.
No offense, Pastor Monty, but you are a straight up cartoon character.
Am I?
Yes.
Well. I live publicly anyway. I don't do anything that I would be ashamed of. And I don't have anything to hide. So and the statements that I make, whether on podcast or in person, they are
equally as offensive.
There's no shortage of controversial comments you've made online.
Equally as offensive in person as they are in podcast.
That's exactly correct.
That's a motto I live by as well.
All right. Josh, if you want to get us into the game,
okay.
we're calling in now.
Wait, you want the actual game going on?
Bring it.
Time to play the game. Time to play the game.
All right. Do I have you guys both?
Yes, sir. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Can we hear them? Yes. Okay. Just want to make sure our online audience can hear you. All right, guys. Welcome. Who do we have here? Greg.
My name is John Parker.
Oh, so we have a John Parker and we have a Greg.
Greg Kumpel. No relation.
There's a lot of mystery behind that behind the ladder there, but okay. So
wait a second. Before we continue, is this my arch nemesis, John?
Yeah. So we have, for those listening, we have calling in for season 3's first trivia game, 2 previous title holders. We are officially forcing them to relinquish their belt at season's end each time. So at this point, it's anybody's belt.
This should be a piece of cake. James Holtower to Mike and Jennings.
All right, for all you Jeopardy fans out there.
That's right.
Okay.
Who won that, by the way?
I don't know. Do you know? No?
Okay.
Do we know who?
I'm still watching it.
Oh, okay.
John takes
no spoilers.
He takes his Jeopardy very seriously. He doesn't miss an episode. And he's heartbroken over Trebek. Anyways, okay, so if you were listening at the beginning, this week's episode is pop culture trends related, and this week's game is reflecting back on the last decade's pop culture trends / events. So I have 10 trivia questions for you guys. Can you guys still hear me?
Yes.
Because it sounds like World War III is happening in the back of one of your guys' houses. Anyways, okay, so here we go. First question. A certain show embodied this pop culture trend of the 2010s with its uber popular main series adapted from a comic book, several spin-offs, as well as an entire other show and podcast dedicated to weekly debriefs. What was this trend of the 2010s?
The Walking Dead. It's the trend?
The trend. So, there we go. Who said zombies? All right, way to piggyback the Walking Dead that he threw your way. That was a gift. But yes, the trend was zombies of 2010s was a huge thing. Lots of movies and TV shows based on zombies, and Walking Dead really encapsulating it the best. So 1-0 to Greg. All right, next question. This book series made premium TV show became impossible to escape when you went back to work on Monday. Move over spring, summer, and fall.
Game of Thrones.
There you go. Game of Thrones. Winter is coming.
Yeah, Greg is hot.
No, that was John, I believe.
1-1.
So 1-1.
I don't watch that. Or didn't.
Third question. Simply.
You missed it out. It's great.
Here we go. Third question. Simply. Kevin Feige's brainchild. Kevin Feige's brainchild.
Oh, I know the name, but I can't think
This
of
is
the
really
show.
disappointing, guys. This is really disappointing.
His brainchild. I've got.
Okay, time's up. The Marvel Cinematic Universe. Kevin Feige is the executive
Come on now.
who orchestrated the entire thing. Next question, still 1-1. Kneeling became a professional athlete's favorite pastime when this person decided that the best way to send a message was during the national anthem.
Colin Kaepernick.
There it is, Colin Kaepernick, previously of the San Francisco 49ers.
I thought it was Chris Kirkpatrick from the NSYNC.
Currently and still unemployed.
Yeah, he's trying. 2-1 to John. Next question. Americans will be hoping for more grace as they age after Warren Beatty mixed up these two Best Picture nominees. It was a big thing a couple years ago. Got a lot of crap for it.
Yeah, was it 10 Years a Slave?
You're looking for the two Best Picture nominees that he mixed up when he announced the winner.
I don't know. I think it's.
I've got nothing.
I can see him doing that.
The answer was La La Land and Moonlight were the two movies he mixed up. He announced La La Land, but really the winner was Moonlight, and it was the whole thing. Next question, still 2-1 to John. Many of these pink and blue parties went awry when couples tried getting a little too creative in the last decade.
Oh, gender reveals.
Woo! We have a game on our hands. Greg comes in hot with the gender reveal parties. That's correct. They went as far as lighting forests on fire and sending themselves to the hospital, blowing cars up. It's pretty crazy. So much for balloons and cakes. Next up, 2-2. Hashtags were big, but never bigger when this movement swept the world and the truth was let out.
Me too.
Me too.
Oh, John, it's okay. That word is considered PG nowadays, so as long as it doesn't go further than that, Greg. Next question, and it's 3-2 to John. When a parent's investment in your future goes a little too far, you get this big moment of the late 2010s.
Repeat that?
When a parent's investment in your future goes a little too far, you get this big moment of the late 2010s.
Well, that was in that parents were paying for college for their kids, or they were driving that.
The college admissions scandal, correct. Felicity Huffman and Lori Laughlin?
Yeah.
Laughlin.
Yeah.
There are 2 questions left, and John is ahead 4-2. So, if this next question doesn't go the right way for Greg, then it's decided. Here we go. Social media evolved to another ugly form when this platform made your next meal the most exciting thing of your day, and influencers were born. Instagram is correct.
Good job, John.
Good job, John. And lastly, this unique garment became a symbol for women's rights after President Trump was inaugurated, and those who protested in Antarctica were probably the most appreciative of them.
Women's garment.
The scarf?
No.
A beanie?
What kind of beanie?
Like the red MAGA beanie?
No, we're a little bit more disgusting than that.
I know.
Do your best. They pink women's reproductive rights hats.
Vagina beanie.
Yes. All right. Good job, guys. John Parker, you are the official and first title holder of the new decade, winning 5-3 against Greg.
Hey, John, don't let him bamboozle you with these cases of Red Bull that he says.
Okay. See you guys later. Good game. Good game. Good game. Good game. All right. So what do we have next? Agitprop. Have you heard of the term agitprop?
No.
Let me read this for you.
Sounds like a sports drink.
Let me read this for you. From President Trump being in office to worldwide movements centered around climate change and immigration, it can be easy to look at the modern era and argue that nothing can be apolitical any longer. What's more interesting, though, is the uptick in directors who are using the public's intensified interest in politics to make movies that serve as calls to arms. Okay. From 2019 films like Dark Waters and The Report, thrillers that underscore the broken American political system are more than just propaganda. They're a uniquely 21st century genre that's coming into its own. The first question, is that true? Is this actually a new phenomenon?
I do not agree.
Yeah, I don't agree either.
Me neither. Hence me saying that as the first question. Why are we thinking why is this person suggesting that it's a new phenomenon? Just being out of touch? Not knowing history?
Because they're not students of film. I don't come on, look at Birth of a Nation. Mm-hmm. Do you guys know Birth of a Nation?
Yep.
Let me post it.
I think it was recently remade.
Well, not students of, and also he's trying to assert that our political system is broken, and on the contrary, what we see happening in our political system right now means it's very much alive.
Explain.
Well,
in short, explain.
At the foundation of our political system is the concept of presenting a position and debating that position, and allowing the public to be able to see the positions and to debate those positions. While I agree that the ultra-left try to shut down discussion, there's been significant fight back to get positions out and to bring about discussions. So no, I disagree. Our system is not broken in any way.
Well, I mean, just like I said, look at Birth of a Nation. You know, in regard to the Klansmen. I mean that.
Oh yeah.
That happened in 1915.
Yeah.
Look at like Hitler's propaganda that was out there.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like people have been using ever since there was a media. Any media, whether it's radio or movies or books, I mean, people have been using it to advance a position That's humanity.
Well, if you want to go back into I mean, yeah, Citizen Kane and
Yeah.
all kinds of stuff, have been used to promote that. So no, he's out of touch.
So, well, that was hot. A question is, will this medium, like this person suggesting in the movies and such, will this become people's sole influence in their social political leanings?
No, I think that's possible.
Do you think that people are going to go to the movies to be educated on an issue, and then that's where they'll get their stance from? It's like in that movie Dark Waters, man. Don't you see?
Yeah.
Do you think that's a thing that will only intensify, unfortunately, moving forward?
In my view, one of the dangers of where we are at educationally and sociologically is the lack of depth of information that people absorb and take as truth. So, a Wikipedia generation or a Google generation. Listen, I get this all the time when I ask a question in class and I get the deer in the headlights look.
Let me respond with a quick counter to that question, or to that point you made, though, is how do we go about discerning truth when traditional journalism is becoming more and more shaky ground?
Well, and let me add to.
So I hear what you're saying, but look at what's come out in the last few years with these supposedly respected journalists and outlets and such. Like, what does that even mean?
Oh yeah, no, I know exactly what you're saying.
Let me add to the degradation factor in regard to media. I think a really good indicator of where we're at in terms of people wanting to get their positions from the media goes back to the Michael Jackson documentary.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
That was a big one.
Yep.
So here,
and everyone was talking about it.
So here you have the Leaving Neverland documentary, the HBO documentary, where people are building their whole positions off of this documentary that provides no criticism. All it provides is opinion, but there's no criticism. There's not multiple angles by which to study something. This documentary is winning awards. So from that standpoint, I would say that when you're taking fiction and nonfiction and blending them together and calling this real, calling it a documentary, but it's losing all of its standards for that, then it's not hard to go the other way, come at it from the other side and take a fiction piece and say this is real. Yeah. So then a piece that you're calling fiction.
So then a convincing opinion is all that's needed anymore.
Yeah.
Like a well-crafted,
compelling story.
Yes. That's all that, because people aren't willing to look at the facts. Like I said, we talked about it a lot last season. Like those FBI reports and such, those are public record now that you can look at as far as what they discovered or didn't discover and so on and so forth. But people just didn't care to look at it.
No, they don't.
All they saw was this really enticing and compelling supposed first-hand experience from these individuals, and now that's the conversation at work.
Well, not only is it the conversation, but now the courts have changed their position and are allowing that to be
like what we just mentioned earlier.
Put it into civil court now.
Mm-hmm.
And we see a change over the last 40 years of media, particularly producers and directors. They used to surreptitiously put into their scripts and into what they were producing things to try to influence society. But now they're just downright overt.
Yeah, they don't even try to hide it.
They just say, we believe that part of our job is to take this position and to try to promote this position.
So what's the point in our systems anymore if you have the criminal court and then you're found innocent or whatever in the case of Michael Jackson, but then like we just talked about, and you can still be taken to civil court, and who knows what will happen there? Like what do we make of that? Like what do we do about that?
Well, an interesting.
What's the point of it?
I was listening to an interesting discussion on Mark Levine's show where he was talking to Horowitz.
What's that name?
Who's a professor. He's a professor of law.
Okay.
And he was talking about the fact an allegation had been brought against him, a sexual allegation, in regard to a high-profile case that he was working on, they were trying to essentially diminish who he was as an individual. And he had absolute documented proof that this supposed event, this alleged event, never took place. But he's spent close to $1 million defending himself from defamation and from other things, trying to ruin his character, because assertions have been made which go against the truth, and he's got proof, but people don't care about that. What they care about is the allegation. And he says that's where we're coming to in our society today. It just reminds me of going back and looking at Francis Schaeffer's work written 50 years ago. How prophetic when you look at his series, How Then Shall We Live?
Yeah, just going back on the term, because I maybe got swept under the rug, but for those that don't know, agitprop means basically political propaganda.
Yeah.
Especially in regards to the arts, like was mentioned here in movies and such.
Have you gotten the chance to see Bombshell?
No, that's the Fox News one, right?
I've heard of it. Yeah, I've heard.
So, Bombshell, pretty well done. It was really well done, especially Charlize Theron. She did really well, and her transformation into
she
Megyn
usually
Kelly.
does do good with those.
Megyn Kelly, I think.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was spot on. But anyway, it was interesting to watch it, and the allegations that were being thrown out at Bill O'Reilly in particular,
right.
with no presentation of another narrative, and that I think is a interesting, dangerous thing to do, because how do you get around the ideas of slander and libel? You know what I mean? He wasn't found guilty in court, for instance, of these things. And yet these things are being thrown out there. So how do you get around the idea of slander and libel?
Yeah,
Not only that,
question.
but he didn't. I listened to an interview with O'Reilly where he was talking about this issue, and he said, "Look, you can't. It's next to impossible to defend yourself today." He said, "And I'm just not going to waste my time. I'm just going to take the $23 million and run." And so he didn't care, because he had boatloads of money coming to him, and he didn't care whether they were making unfounded allegations or not.
No, that's an interesting point, though, and I don't know him, and I don't know what's true and what's not true, but I understand his position of being tense and unwinnable. But so this was when Me Too started. James Franco was in support of it. He went to an award show wearing a pin, Me Too, to support the cause, yada, yada, yada. But then not long after that,
they turned on him.
And then he never said anything.
Right.
He never came out, made a public statement, never did anything like that. Again, don't know if it's true, those accusations against him, but his position eventually was that he could try to defend himself, but that would basically put him in a position of damned if I do, damned if I don't, because if I do defend myself, now I'm being insensitive to this real thing in some of these women's cases, a lot of them even, that they went through these things of sexual abuse and harassment and all these things. But if he defends himself, now the public will say, "See, you're insensitive, blah, blah, blah. See, he just wants to make it go away because now it's on him," and blah, blah, blah. So you can understand already his position of being like, well, no, that's not true, but I can't defend myself because then they're going to say this and that, it's this terrible thing. So, you said, it's becoming hard to defend yourself because you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't.
Absolutely. And Scripture talks about the necessity for, as believers, we need to have integrity in how it is that we live. So this goes back to Josh's comment earlier that, you need to live out in the public, and you need to live in such a way that you have integrity in who you are as an individual, because people are going to make, particularly today with the Me Too movement and all that nonsense, people are going to make accusations sometimes just to try to bring you down. And the reality of it is that Scripture says that you have to have more than just one person that substantiates an allegation. But from a legal standpoint, what we have happening is we have an attempt by those on the far left in their philosophical thinking to overturn the foundations of our country based upon the Magna Carta, that you are innocent until proven guilty. And they're trying to say, no, you're guilty and you have to prove that you're innocent. And so there is a cultural war which has taken place to try to flip that now in our culture.
Right. So we have just 5 minutes left. So
I just like to put on the record, like, I don't have a problem with I don't have a problem. In fact, I suppose, the fact that the bad things are coming to light.
Right.
You know? And I think I think it's appropriate. But I do think that we have to be really careful in how we're doing that. Scripture calls us to be really careful in how we're doing that.
I agree.
So I think that there's been a lot of looking the other way that is highly inappropriate, evil even. And, you know, I'm glad that people aren't looking the other way. But people are also swinging the pendulum too, and that is equally as dangerous.
yeah,
Yes.
if Me Too is a broom, people are just going sweeping over everything with it instead of like seeing where the actual messes are and then cleaning them up. They're just everything is being swept under this huge umbrella of a cause, if you will.
Well, speaking of the movie industry, I mean, look at what's happening with Harvey Weinstein. And you know, he's currently in trial on the East Coast, but now the West Coast wants to indict him and bring him to trial as well. His industry, at the time that he was at the height of what he was doing, kind of promoted that whole, you know, old boy type of approach of dealing with
They
people.
looked the other way.
And they looked at, people knew it was going on, they looked the other way. So that's entirely appropriate that he be brought to judgment. On the other hand, we look at what happened, for example, with the Kavanaugh hearings, and people's asserting that, you know, you did something 40 years ago that is no way can be substantiated or proven one way or the other. I agree with Josh 100%. It's very dangerous, and you have to be very careful.
So in the last couple minutes, I just want to open it up, and maybe it's unfair to put you guys in a couple minute timeline, but are there other trends that you envision in the next 10 years that are going to put us in a precarious position as believers and as a culture at large, not just believers, but do you envision specific things coming? Maybe it's an evolution of something that's already been presented, or, you know.
I mean, I think the biggest danger in terms of like society to the believer has to do, like, there's a couple fronts. I think in terms of health, I think that there's going to be a big thing with health that we're already starting to see, where you have,
like, what kind of health?
The government deciding. You've got people on the train of the government being able to decide what happens to our children.
Like the vaccination thing.
I'm talking about the vaccination thing, but it goes beyond the vaccination thing.
Sure, Mike Bloomberg, you can't buy big gulps anymore.
Okay, so I don't have a problem with people taxing things and so on and so forth. But in any case, so I think that that's really, really dangerous. I think that sort of universal power given to the government, you know, in a very, what am I thinking of? Not communist, socialist. In a very like extreme socialist way that goes beyond economic socialism, but now goes to something bigger than that. I think is really scary, and I think that Christianity is going to have a really hard time with it, and pretty much every place where we have appreciated religious exemption. So there's that. So there's the health side. I think that the identification of the gender identification and sexuality and all of that is going to play a big deal. I think that there's going to be a big push to remove the tax exempt status of the church if it doesn't comply with social standards. So I could see that being a big deal. I think those are the two. I think those are the two main ones. There's stuff with education there too. I think that the push to remove like classical education. I mean, that's kind of already swept through. We've like replaced classical education in the school system with STEM, and just like very technical things.
Right.
And I think that homeschooling is going to be weeded out, or going to be tried to weed it out. So basically, you have all of these like socialist sort of agendas where we consolidate everything into one and have no like distinctions. That I think is kind of where we're headed.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I think that right now we're in a very dangerous position in that it's unclear which side will win. And yet, from a historical standpoint, those who are more conservative in their views tend to grow tired fast. And those who are more liberal, and so those that are pushing for economic as well as social-economic socialism, have a long history of being patient and continually pushing their issues and trying to get themselves into places of influence where they can have their issues substantiated. So in the educational system, I mean, when I was reading back when I was a young man,
1917-ish.
Back in the day, and maybe not quite that far back, but, you know, when I would read material from the homosexual community, particularly when you look at statements by Globe and others 30 and 40 years ago, who said, we're not even interested in trying to convert our generation into believing that homosexuality is our right and our privilege, that's a waste of our time. Where we're going to focus our efforts is in going after the children.
Yeah.
And going after education. And so what you've seen over the past 30 years is a definite, precise, targeted attack upon getting their viewpoint into the educational system. And I think that conservatives react to some of the things that they see happening now, but they lose stamina in the fight. And that's the danger.
I think that wouldn't be a problem. First of all, this is going to sound weird, but I applaud them for that forward thinking. Mm-hmm. I think that that's the way that people should be thinking. And I think that the reason why they have been largely successful at getting into the mindset of the younger generation is simply because the evangelical community hasn't cared about the younger generation.
They didn't do their diligence.
Yeah. And if the evangelical community had cared about the younger generation and taught them to think with their minds and defend themselves, then they would be able to defend those positions when they come across them. But because they haven't taught them that way, and they've given the education process over to the school system, which has systematically removed like any sort of, like I said, classical training, like the trivium is what we call it.
Yeah.
Then the kids have been so easily inundated. So I don't personally have a problem with them taking that approach. I think that's the approach that everybody should take in regard to advancing a position.
I'm not in disagreement with you. You're thinking that there's some brilliance in their forward thinking. I'm just saying that from an overall position, that yes, I believe the church is going to have much to answer for.
Yeah.
Look at Nancy Percy's writings and her as she deals with trying to explain what happened in regard to the church giving way to Darwinism. And that type of progressive evolution theory in regard to creation. We lost that at the turn of the century several hundred years ago because the church refused to take up and fight for the significance of what God's Word has to say.
No, the church has been doing that ever since the Enlightenment era.
I agree. So that and that's the danger, is that we are being pushed more and more towards that. And when you stand for truth, it means you have to be vigilant and stand for truth.
Good ending point indeed. All right. Well, thanks, guys. welcome back to season 3. Thanks for our callers who called in and wanted to play, and our participants online. We had a few at least. Thank you. Yeah, just a quick plug for Pastor Monty's podcasts on Tuesdays at 11 a.m. Truth Time, it's called. You can still look forward to that. That's all that I really have for you to plug for you this week. So just stay tuned to our Facebook page.
Well, we got church on Sunday. You guys should pay attention to our weekly sermons that they're coming up here.
Yeah, everything is broadcasted. And then, as always, if you're interested in what we're talking about, you can go back and look at the video, look at the comments, reach out to us. And look for all of our stuff on abfpdx.org. And if you're without a church, you can reach out to one of us through our Facebook pages or individually, and we're happy to plug you in and stimulate truth for you. Welcome back to Culture and Sanity, and we look forward to next time, 2 weeks from today at 9. See you guys.